The Raffi, it looks like we're coming up on some sort of liquidity. As the Fed tightens, we're headed for some sort of liquidity crisis. How do you think this plays out, and how does this affect silver and gold? We could have another liquidity crisis. It certainly seems that we're in that direction, judging by the increase in unemployment in initial unemployment claims. I think it was above estimates. I saw an article on Zero Hedge today. We're seeing bubble stocks start to go south. We're seeing stocks generally start to go south. So we're seeing the beginning inklings of this when it happened in 2008, right? Silver pretty much collapsed very temporarily for a few months, and 2020 was even quicker. It collapsed in 2 weeks, but then it slingshot right back up. So this next liquidity crisis, and it's coming because it happens every time the Fed raises rates, and it happens because there's a run to safety or anything, and then everyone thinks the dollar is safe and they want safety. It's not that. It's that there's so much dollar-denominated debt overseas because of the very trade deficits and all this exporting of dollars that the US does. There's like $13 trillion outside the banking system in dollars. So companies borrow in dollars, and when there's a liquidity crisis, they need dollar reserves to service their debts, or else they go bankrupt and they lose their assets. So it's a flight to the debt service. It's an emergency, and that could happen again, and when it does happen again, the Fed can either not print and then let these companies go bankrupt. And what happens then? The bankrupt companies no longer need dollars in the dollar tanks, or they could print as much dollars as these companies need and keep interest rates under control that way. And then the purchasing power from a consumer standpoint of the dollar tanks, and and then the dollar dies that way. So either way the dollar dies. Just the question is, like, in the middle, how much of a dip in other assets are we going to have before the Fed reacts? The last time in March 2020, it was 2 weeks. So we might see that in silver. We might see silver go down some crazy amounts for a very temporary time, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to happen. But as silverbacks, you have to understand the possibility of this. That's happened twice before. And if it happens again, you have to be ready for it, and you have to have the ammunition to do your final dip line, because this is going to be the last one when the Fed rushes back in to try to rescue from this next liquidity crisis. It's going to be, what's shocking, off $5 trillion, $10 trillion of, and whatever it is going to be bigger than the last one. It's definitely going to be bigger than the last one. And March 2020 was bigger than 2008. 2008 was bigger than anything it did before. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, because that's the pattern, and that's how it's always been. That's how. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but what I can be pretty sure of is it's going to be quicker than it took from the maximum balance sheet after QE3. I think it was like 4.7 trillion, and then they started to push it down a little bit, and then September 2019 happened. So I think, what was that, maybe 3 or 4 years from the beginning of that descent there in 2018? It's gonna be like watching the paint dry as they slowed the balance sheet to run off organically, to run off the balance sheet there. And then it took, what was it, like 15 to 16 months or something, until the robocalypse and rates went to 10%, and then they reversed. So it's going to be less time than that, because we're in a much crazier situation now, and everything is much less stable and more dangerous. So how long does it take? Less than it took then. So less than a year, I would say. What is happening in rates and bonds? Is it? I mean, it's basically like the whole question of, do you think rates are going to go up? And I'm not accusing anyone of stupid questions here, but I'm saying that the whole conception of, you could have a central bank come in and buy $120 billion, whatever it is, a month, and then suddenly stop buying $120 billion of whatever is a month. And then what do you expect is going to happen to the price of that thing? They were buying it, they stopped buying. Like, do you think it's going to go down than that? The 5-year-old could figure that out. But nobody wants to say it, because since all real yields are negative, that means anyone who buys this stuff is guaranteed to lose money unless somebody else buys it off of them. For even higher guarantee of even more money loss. And that's what central banks were doing. But now that they're not doing that anymore, anyone who buys this paper is going to have to hope that whatever central bank is going to come back in and buy it for even more of a negative rate, and there's no guarantee that's going to happen anymore. So who would buy? There's no reason why rates should stay negative at all, and why, if nobody thought that a central bank would step in again, rates would just automatically zip right back up to positive territory. Well, they got to think, well, there is an inkling of what market interest rates should be for insolvent borrowers. I mean, what's the interest rate on a credit card of someone who has a high balance? It's about 20, 5% or something. I mean, I don't carry a balance on my credit card, but I know that if I did, I'd be paying about 1,718%, and you know I have good credit, but I'm not essential thing, I'm not a government, so you know that they're ready to spike the rates up on me if I so much as have a tiny amount of balance. So I would expect that if I were a credit card company loaning to the federal government, I wouldn't loan them anything.